You're listening to Casual Alterations, a podcast by and for fans of Altered TCG. Here's your hosts, Kari and Ian.
Oh, in my life.
Yeah.
John Lennon, but Beatles.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a good and easy one
Well,
for many reasons.
For us. Welcome, bienvenue. Welcome.
Bonjour, hello. Welcome to Casual Alterations Podcast, the least professional and most tardy podcast about Equinox's TCG Altered.
This is a podcast where we talk about Altered and why we love it, even when we're 4 weeks late in updating. I'm Kari, the tokens lady.
And I'm Ian, the token husband. Today we're going to talk about Skybound Odyssey, set number 4, altered key art that came out just a few hours ago, and talk about what it shows.
But first, we want to remind you that this podcast could be brought to you by you if you were to support us on Patreon or make playing cards or Etsy by buying our products.
Well, the big thing is the map. Please help support us with some map. We've still got some maps left. We'd love to send them out to you.
We appreciate your support.
And the blue sky, obviously, we're not doing it quite as often as we had in the past.
We are still talking about Altered all the time, just not always recording it. We had some computer issues that delayed our podcast for a little while.
And then I was job hunting, so both of those two things take up a good amount of time when you're trying to get them resolved. But let's jump into Skybound Odyssey right away. Let's take a look at that art. Let's begin with the Bravos art that we saw for the new hero, Soul, and how are we going to pronounce the...
I'm going with Halua.
Halua, so kind of a Hawaiian kind of sounding name.
Yeah, that's the vibe I get from it.
Well, I guess there are islands, floating islands in the key art, so we can go with that.
Yeah, there sure are. There are floating islands in the key art, which I believe points to Enosha.
So what is Enosha?
Enosha is one of the divided regions of Asgartha. Enosha is to the east, and it's divided into two provinces, Caer Esvander and Caer Elcata. Caer Elcata is known for being made up of floating islands.
What we can also see from this art, mountains.
Yes.
And what appears to be the spindle. Those mountains are probably just a little bit west of the spindle.
Most likely those mountains are the Silg, which is the eastern part of the Kirigai portion of the peninsula, which is where the woods are that the spindle is smack in the middle of.
And we've been told that the spindle is possibly dying or going through some kind of change. Spindle normally looks pink. This picture, though, definitely looks more green, more like you would expect a tree to look. The spindle, though historically has been pink, is not generally green.
We know from the story with Tasia and Naura descending into the maze that the spindle is dying. At least Tasia and Naura believe that it is. We know that there are people who are working on trying to save it. That's about all that we know.
Let's take a look further at that art. There is some kind of flying circle shapes as well as a fish or a whale type creature. It looks decidedly like it has a muzzle, as unlike any other types of animal that we've seen. I have no idea what it is.
I didn't think of it that way, I guess. I thought it looked sort of like a whale or a dolphin. We know that it's not Kaibara, but given that it's placed in the back of the art closer to the mountains, there's a likelihood that it could have taken over Kaibara's nest, whatever it is. Perhaps even a child of Kaibara. Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh, wow, that would be crazy.
I'm just pulling that out of the air. That's not official lore, mind you, but I'd like it to be.
You had some ideas about the light that's between the mountains and the spindle.
Yes, the blue light that is shooting up into the air from the ground reminds me of the light that was coming out of the Nylum tree where Kurakami had been trapped or imprisoned. That makes me wonder if there is maybe another Eidolon trapped there. This may also be related to the dying of the spindle. The spindle is so huge, its roots could stretch who knows how far, and if this thing is in the ground, surrounded by those roots, or even a part of the spindle in some way, that would explain why this light is coming out.
Well, and this could also be a refuge.
The wind refuge.
The wind refuge. It would represent the air elements. Each one of the refuges represents a different element in this world. So we probably are staying in Asgartha for the Skybound Odyssey adventure, although we're up in the air.
Yeah, that is up in the air. Yeah, but since we have confirmation that there are new heroes and we can see new individuals in this art, it's clear that we're going to be following different heroes. So it's okay that all the known heroes are further out into the wilds doing their adventure. So we're back in Asgartha probably, focusing on these new heroes and their stories.
So one of the things that we do see right away here is a huge manta ray with a woman holding on to some kind of rope on a ship. This is the art that we know now as Soul.
Halua.
Halua. Again, Halua.
Halua. The manta ray Leviathan.
So this manta ray Leviathan is very interesting.
I agree. So what the card says is when you are the first player to say, I pass. You're
On any turn, right?
Yes, on any turn. It doesn't matter if you're the first player or the second player or the fourth player or whatever. When you're the first person during the afternoon to say, I pass, then your hero gets a quest counter. And after that, if your hero has 3 or more quest counters, you create Halua, the 2/2/2 companion token in your companion expedition. And if your hero has 5 or more counters, that companion is gigantic. But what it really is saying is, gosh, are you tired of always having your opponent say after you? How about we reward you for that?
So this is the anti-Akesha.
Well, it's also anti-Ortis, anti-Ysmir in general, right? Because when you're playing against factions that are always wanting to react to what you do, you never want to finish before they do because you know whatever they do is going to hurt you, right? Here is a card that actually rewards you for finishing your turn first.
From my experience playing Basira in Bravos, I'm always done first. Like it's even my first turn and I am done before my opponent all the time. It is very easy to finish before your opponent in Bravos.
Yes, absolutely in Bravos. It sure is because a lot of times you're just trying to curve out every turn, right? However much mana you have, you're going to spend that on your thing.
And you're stopping usually at 6 unless you're playing Atsadi, which you're trying to get out to 20. But in most of them, Buddha, Kojo,
Yep.
Basira, you want to stop at 6. You don't want to go past that.
Yep. In my experience, most of the time when I play Bravos, I'm done before you are. And most of the time, I feel bad about that. But here's a hero that says, hey, don't feel bad about that. That's what we want. So it's sort of like a reverse Kojo or Auroch Kojo combination a little bit.
Yep, because you need the counters in order for it to get better and better. I was hoping Palau had something a little bit more powerful. I guess a 2/2/2 as a regular token is pretty powerful, especially with gigantic, but I was hoping more for a 4/4/4.
I mean, I understand what you're saying, absolutely. However, we know from watching the meta that heroes creating tokens is extremely powerful. And there needs to be a limit on that.
That's true.
So
that's true.
It's possible that it was bigger at one time and had to be reduced due to the performance of other token creating heroes in the last couple of sets.
Very true. It does add an interesting little aspect to Bravos, though. I wonder if Kojo becomes only the aggro Bravos hero, and Kojo loses a lot of the meta in the future because this seems like it's much better for a later game.
That's true. Once you get into the later game, Kojo fizzles out a lot because the 2/2/2 just isn't good enough.
Yep.
In a deck that's not focused on having a lot of different creatures. Like with Ortis, where Sigismar continues to be strong in the late game, you're playing cards that care about having multiple characters in your expeditions. Even a 1/1/1 counts towards that, whereas with Bravos, you're not playing that sort of strategy, so you need those characters that you have to be impactful.
I think gigantic makes sense for Bravos too, so it's very interesting.
Yes.
But you're creating a token. You're the tokens lady.
I may have some things in the works.
Now this one, I will admit, was tougher. There were some original pieces that were just like off the brain, boom, you knew what you were doing. And there were some that were, you needed a little help trying to figure out what to do, but you got there very quickly. This one was not like that at all.
Oh, there are 3 kinds of tokens that I create. The one that I immediately know what I want to do and it comes out easy. The Manamoth is a great example of that. I did the stained glass Manamoth in, I think, less than 8 hours. I had an inspiration, I sat down, I did it, it was done by the next day. No problem, easy. And then there are ones that I have to do a lot of research to find the angles that I want to draw things from, looking for references, what to place where, what's going to work, what isn't. And then once I get that, it's very easy. And then there are the ones that I struggle with for so long that I have to put them down and walk away for weeks. Kurakami is a good example of that. I had a number of different sketches that I tried, and I just didn't like any of them. And then one day I was looking for something, I don't even remember what, and I stumbled across a Japanese ink style painting. And I said, oh, no, actually that's it. And then once I had that, it was much easier to get the art out. It's going to take some iterations, but I have already started work on that. I have ideas. It's coming eventually when I finish it. The thing is that this character is huge, but also it has some very distinct imagery on it. So you want to make sure that you represent both its size and also what makes it unique from other creatures of the same type. So you can't just make a manta ray. How do you know that it's not just any manta ray? Well, it's this one because he's got those tattoos or whatever those markings are, but you still don't see how huge it is unless there's something else in the art with it.
There are those markings underneath that are very pronounced.
These horizontal marks are gills.
Gills, yeah, so that is...
Yep. A manta ray does have a large mouth that's usually sort of flat, but when it goes to eat, it opens up like a giant gaping hole. I encourage you to go look at pictures of manta rays on the internet. They are very interesting, weird-looking creatures.
It's unlikely to hit some kind of browser issue either.
Yeah,
it will be safe for work.
You're probably not going to stumble into anything inappropriate.
Well, that's not the only hero that we see. We see Rainbow Painter and a koi.
The child with the paintbrush and what looks to be a rainbow paper koi fish.
So this one is kind of interesting. It's definitely going to be Lyra. How that actually comes out as an ability, I have no idea.
I don't know, but I'll tell you what, I wish it were a token because I already have a stained glass fish that I made for Magic, and I would be more than happy to adapt into an altered token. So, designers, if you're listening, love that rainbow fish as a token.
So we have that one, and then we're going to say the Axiom one. As we go to the right further, we see someone standing atop some major robot, like a huge robotic figure.
And this robotic figure, to me, is very important because it is a dark blue/purple color, much like the brass bug was that we saw in the last set, and it has purple markings all over it, like the brass bug did. So this is clearly made out of the same materials and powered with the same sap or adapted fluid of whatever kind as the new brass bugs are that we saw in the last set.
And so the last set is taking place outside of Asgartha. This image, we're looking far east from Asgartha, looking onto Asgartha. It's a possibility that that purple color, that sap, possibly is from outside of Asgartha. Maybe that Kellon that we know, the blue Kellon, is only within Asgartha, within that area. And it is, maybe they need something else to help power their vehicles and creatures outside of that.
That's a possibility. I'm wondering to myself, if this robot did in fact come from outside Asgartha, how is it here?
That's a good question.
Was it always here?
Mm-hmm.
Or did it recently come here?
Yep.
I can't wait to hear more about its story.
And we notice that the hero is on top of the companion here. We've seen heroes riding on companions. There's another 2 of them here in this art too. Soul is clearly not riding on her manta ray.
Yeah, I did find that very interesting. Here she has this absolutely enormous companion that flies. She could very well just ride along with it, right? But either it's not interested or she's not interested. She does not appear to have any sort of fear of heights, as she's just dangling precariously from the mast of this ship that she's floating on. Clearly there's some boundary issues there. Maybe it's not quite ready to I mean, surely she's not too heavy for it. It's enormous. But I did think that was very interesting.
It is. We're going to switch over to the right, to the Ortis one. Definitely, that is an angel. And the angel has some kind of flying bird. Some bird of paradise of some sort.
It's really very beautiful, but it's got kind of a weird, twisty gold thing on its head. I can't figure out if that's like a jewelry or some kind of adornment, or if that's part of the bird.
Yeah, it does look more like an adornment. I would call it maybe more of a heron or an egret.
And I'm very intrigued. It's got these beautiful blue feathers with little gold tips on them. I'd love to know more about that one, too. Ortis doesn't need any more tokens, so I hope it's not a token. That might be the only time you ever hear me say those words, but I hope this is not a token.
What is very interesting about this hero for Ortis, too, they have a sword.
Etsadi and Surge has a sword in the art, and Etsadi is actually pointing it at the viewer.
We do get the idea that Etsadi is a soldier, definitely a warrior-type character. Hopefully we don't have an Ortis hero that cares about big things as well.
I hope that's not the case, but we'll see.
So then we also have what we're assuming is the Ysmir, some kind of shepherd.
It does look like a shepherd's crook, yeah.
But it does have a piece of Kellon at the end of it, as if the crook is holding a piece of Kellon.
Okay, I've just had a flash of inspiration live on this podcast. I believe this is the Ysmir moth breeder. The hat has that same sort of large, wide brim. This person is surrounded by mana moths in the air. They're holding a staff with the crook on the end, just like the moth breeder has, and a lantern on the end of the staff, and they are holding a lantern in the moth breeder art. I think this is an evolution of the Ysmir moth breeder.
That's very possible.
So maybe that companion is sort of a caterpillar.
It's possible that it would turn into a moth at some time. We don't see the front face of the hero, so we're not sure about that. And the companion could be just about anything. Yeah, I think what you've just pointed out is a great point. All of that seems to make sense. So either they are the moth breeder or they are part of the group of people that breed moths.
Sure, maybe it's not the Ysmir moth breeder, but it's a Ysmir moth breeder. I could see that. The last hero/companion pair that we can see in this art, right in the center, very small, so you're going to need to zoom way in, appears to be a little fluffy cloud sheep with a green-clad hero on its back. Clearly, this is going to be Muna.
And a sheep.
A sheep.
Why would you have a companion sheep? I guess you could fly on it.
Well, perhaps you're a shepherd, and that's how the tumult presented your companion to you, because you're already surrounded by sheep. Why not another sheep? But this one is fluffy and cloud-like, and it seems to be able to fly, which is pretty neat.
It does add a lot of questions to what that is going to be. We'll let you think about it, let you remunerate about what it is that it could possibly be.
Oh,
and what
remunerate. I see what you did there.
Obviously, we're not going to talk much about it right now.
What I think is interesting about this art, the longer we look at it, every single hero and companion is going away from the camera, except Halua, which is coming towards us. So I think we might be seeing a hint of some sort of confrontation here between everyone else and Halua.
So this might be earlier in the story then. We're assuming there's probably not even been a Musabi between Sol and Halua yet. They're not even connected.
Perhaps, and that would explain why Sol is not with Halua in the art like all the other heroes are with their companions. So maybe the center of the story has something to do with meeting this Leviathan, trying to defeat it, and maybe instead of defeating it, Sol bonds with it.
Yeah, that is a very interesting story. We have seen variations on the hero-companion Musubi connection. Kojo was probably the best one of the stories told, the Kojo Buddha story, how they became bonded. Some of the other ones are not quite as concerned with that. The Sigismar story, for example, and the Gulong story, their companions are barely mentioned in their stories. But it would be great to have a full set, a full tale within one set that just talks about how two people become bonded.
An origin story
Yeah.
for the new hero. I really like that.
Yep, absolutely.
Taking the new mechanics, the new cards in this set, and mixing it with the lore and giving us all the pieces to get to know this character. I like that idea.
All right, well, that will do it for today. We really appreciate you listening, and thank you, and have a great week, everyone.
Oh, we forgot to say, please take a few moments to rate our podcast wherever you find it, because this is social media, and approval makes the world go round.
And don't forget to find us on the interwebs. Casual Alterations, never a space. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
This has been Casual Alterations Podcast. For more information, please visit us at casualalterations.wordpress.com.